Coming up on a newscast, South Korea's Jamsu Bridge is closed off due to heavy downpour. Concerns mount as rain is expected to continue in the greater capital region until Friday morning. President Yoon wraps up his 5-day visit to Spain. During his NATO address, he called for stronger cooperation to show the international community's will to denuclearize North Korea. A decision for 2023's hourly wage is reached at the Minimum Wage Commission. At $9,621, it's a 5% on-year hike. Hello, it's great to have you with us. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin with our top story. Torrential downpours are disrupting traffic in the nation's capital. For the first time in 2 years, Jamsu Bridge, which crosses the Han River in central Seoul, has been closed off. Yoon takes us to the site.
This year's monsoon is pounding the central part of South Korea. There's been numerous cases of flooding and landslides. As of 6 p.m. on Thursday, the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasure Headquarters said 2 people have died from the heavy rain. Over 80 properties have been flooded.
Heavy rainfall has raised water levels so high that Jamsu Bridge has completely closed off for the first time in 2 years. Back over there, that's where pedestrians, bikers, and cars would used to go by. But now that water levels have surpassed 7 meters, it's impossible for anybody to pass. And right over there, there used to be chairs and tables for people to enjoy the Han River at. But you can't even see them now because it's completely underwater.
The last time Jamsu Bridge in Seoul was closed off was in the summer of 2020. Back then, water levels peaked at over 11 meters. Though water levels aren't as high as before, authorities are still on the lookout because the country is expecting to see even more rainfall until Friday morning. Up to 150 millimeters is set to pour down in the greater capital region. The capital region has already seen what 130 millimeters worth of rain overnight can do. On Thursday morning, there were reports of major traffic congestion. By 9 a.m., cars in Seoul were driving at an average speed of just 14.7 kilometers per hour. Large streams had overflown with water, closing off major roads like the Dongbu Expressway. That's why authorities encouraged people to use public transport. Seoul City has extended the number of buses and subway trains operating during rush hour for an extra 30 minutes. The Korea Meteorological Administration has said making an exact prediction as to when skies will clear up is difficult, as rain clouds are rapidly changing. What they've analyzed so far is that the central part of Korea will see heavy rain till Friday morning. Yoon, Arirang News.
The government expressed deep regret over North Korea's apparent release of water from a dam near the border without prior notice. A Unification Ministry official told reporters that Pyongyang appears to have opened the floodgates of the Hwanggang Dam, and that if this is true, it's regrettable that the regime didn't inform Seoul when requests for such notice were publicly made just this week. South Korea's military is closely monitoring the situation to ensure the safety of people in the affected area and their property. Wrapping up his trip to Spain, President Yoon is having a series of bilateral meetings with leaders from the Czech Republic, Canada, and the UK. Discussions include cooperation in North Korea and economic security. Yoon Jung-min tells us more.
South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol wraps up his Spain trip on Thursday for this week's NATO summit with a series of sideline meetings, bolstering cooperation with partner countries for exports and North Korea's denuclearization. Meeting Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, President Yoon thanked Canada for its participation in the Korean War over 7 decades ago and mentioned a newly established monument in Canada to mark victory of the Gapyeong battle.
또 양국의 이런 우호를 바탕으로 해서 앞으로도 이런 첨단 기술, 인공지능, 에너지 이런 첨단 미래 산업으로 또 경제 안보 협력을 양국이 강화해 나갈 수 있을 것으로 생각합니다.
Canada is deeply engaged in the North Pacific and in the Indo-Pacific on a broad range of issues, and Korea is a very important partner to us.
The two leaders reaffirmed coordination for the denuclearization of North Korea, on which Trudeau mentioned a complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization. They also condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine. There also was a pull-aside meeting with UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson to strengthen cooperation on various fields, apparently on North Korea, trade, and nuclear power. And during a meeting with the Prime Minister of the Czech Republic, Petr Fiala, President Yoon asked for support so that Korean companies can make inroads into a Dukovany nuclear power plant project in that country, as well as support for Korea's bid to host 2030 World Expo in Busan. The Czech leader hoped to expand cooperation with Korea on electric car batteries and hydrogen. Before returning home, Yoon sits down with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, with whom an earlier meeting was delayed due to prolonged discussions over NATO membership issues. They are likely to discuss bolstering the partnership between Korea and NATO. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
President Yoon's packed schedule in Spain also included a meeting with local business leaders. During the sessions, he discussed how the two countries can work together on the economic front. Kim Hyun-sung fills us in.
En la unión está la fuerza. That's a Spanish proverb, meaning in union, there's strength. And building strength by working together is what South Korea and Spain had set out to do when President Yoon Suk-yeol met with Spain's economic leaders in Madrid on Thursday. Present at the meeting were the president of the Spanish Chamber of Commerce, along with local CEOs.
여기 계신 스페인 경제인 여러분은 이미 한국 기업과 협력하고 있거나 또는 협력 의향을 갖고 계신 것으로 알고 있습니다.
President Yoon was accompanied by South Korea's top diplomatic and economic officials. Over lunch, figures from both countries discussed how to boost trade and mutual investments. Spain is currently the fourth biggest economy in the European Union. It also has a strong foothold in some of the world's most prominent industries. South Korea and Spain are already engaged in a lively level of trade. For the first quarter of this year, more than $1.5 billion worth of trade went back and forth between them, making Spain South Korea's seventh largest trader from the EU. And for 2021, the two countries increased both exports and imports by almost 25% compared to the year before. But more can happen. Spain has recently been showing interest in expanding the green energy sector and 5G networks. These are some objectives that South Korea and its companies share.
경제인들이야말로 양국 협력의 최일선에 계시는 분들입니다. 오늘 이 자리가 양국 간의 경제 협력을 더욱 강화하는 그런 소중한 자리가 되었으면 좋겠습니다.
President Yoon said on Thursday that to tackle global risks, cooperation is crucial. He also said that he's all ears to any difficulties that may arise in the process of working together. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
While the leaders of Seoul and Tokyo had their first exchanges, a one-on-one sit-down has not happened yet, mainly due to historical and political issues. But since there are other areas of shared interest, many anticipate such a session could happen soon. Kim Dami explains further.
Even after multiple encounters between the leaders of South Korea and Japan at 2022 NATO, there was no much anticipated bilateral summit to defrost the currently icy Seoul-Tokyo relations. But experts say not all hope is lost.
The fact that the South Korean leader himself expressed his will to improve relations is something that Japan can think of positively. And when the political situation allows, conditions for deeper discussions will be created.
One of the political situations, for instance, could be Japan's upper house election next month. In fact, experts are convinced that the very first Yoon-Kishida summit is highly likely to take place afterward. However, a two-track approach that isolates historical disputes and highlights a common interest in solidarity based on economic security may be a more appropriate way to mend ties between the two countries.
The Yoon administration and the Kishida government share similar diplomatic interests on China, North Korea issues and alliances, beefing up cooperation between South Korea, US, and Japan, and participating in the IPAF. More active involvement will broaden Seoul-Tokyo coordination.
Plus, security ties between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo have never been tighter than they are now amid concerns that Pyongyang is on the verge of resuming nuclear tests. Another expert points out that trilateral cooperation on security driven by the U.S. will allow Seoul-Tokyo ties to improve.
The South Korean government will become closer with the US, and during that process, South Korea and Japan will actively play along with Washington's East Asia policy, which will also allow Seoul and Tokyo to become closer.
Hurdle after hurdle lie ahead for South Korea-Japan relations, namely taking care of possible South Korean court rulings resulting in the liquidation of the Japanese firm's assets in the country over Japan's wartime forced labor. But the hunt for diplomatic solutions is expected to continue, with the South Korean government planning to launch a joint public-private body to address the issue. 김다미, Arirang News.
The Chinese government vows to respond if its interests are harmed. That's coming from the Foreign Ministry spokesperson at a briefing on Thursday. When asked about the participation of Asian countries in the NATO summit, Zhao Lijian said the advancement of relations between countries must aid international peace and stability without causing hostility or harming the interests of third parties. He added Beijing will observe NATO closely. The organization announced on Wednesday that China's policies challenge the bloc's interests, security, and values. South Korea's minimum wage is going up by 5% next year. The decision was made by members representing the public interest at the Minimum Wage Commission after negotiations between labor and business broke down. Han Sung-woo has the latest.
The Minimum Wage Commission has set South Korea's minimum hourly wage for next year at 9,620 Korean won, or about $7.40. That's a 5% increase from the current minimum of around $7, a decision neither the business community nor labor unions are completely happy with, amid rising inflation and living costs. The two sides, despite rounds of negotiations and revised proposals, failed to reach an agreement Wednesday night.
A minimum wage hike is essential to move forward, to create new momentum for resolving the polarization of inequality.
It's tough on businesses these days. The minimum wage must be stabilized for small and medium-sized enterprise just scraping by.
This meant public interest representatives had to intervene and put their own proposal up for a vote. Out of 27 members of the trilateral panel, 12 voted in support, 1 voted against, and there were 10 abstentions. 4 labor representatives from the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions refused to take part at all.
Under the current system, South Korea's minimum wage is determined through collective bargaining, which doesn't consider the characteristics of industries, regions, or the economic climate. It's important for experts to make a minimum wage proposal after reviewing the current situation first, and for the representatives to take that into account when negotiating.
The Labor Ministry has until August 5th to formally announce the new wage floor, which will take effect on January 1st. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now, Samsung Electronics has become the world's first to start mass-producing 3-nanometer class chips. Compared to the conventional 5 nanometers, the new technology can reduce power consumption by up to 45%. It can also improve performance by 23%, and the chips take up 16% less space. By becoming the first in the world to reach 3 nanometers, the Korean tech giant is hoping to gain new clients ahead of its Taiwanese rival, TSMC, in contract chip manufacturing. Although Samsung did not directly name the clients for its advanced foundry technology, analysts believe the initial users would be Samsung itself and companies in China. The Finance Ministry released a report on a number of important policy changes coming up. These include easing rules on mortgage lending to help first-time home buyers, also bigger tax cuts on fuel, as well as measures to support strategic high-tech industries. Lee Hyun outlines what to expect.
The government's announced a number of important measures for the second half of the year to help consumers and the economy. The Ministry of Finance said Thursday that to give some relief to drivers paying record-high fuel prices, it's likely to increase the tax cut on fuel to the legal limit of 37%. The tax cut right now is at 30%. This will bring down gasoline prices by around 4 US cents a liter and diesel by about 3 cents. The Financial Services Commission is going to expand its support for people who, because of the pandemic, are struggling to keep up with their loans while they're self-employed or running a small business. From October, many will be eligible for lower interest rates and principal payments. Also, to help more people get on the property ladder, the rules will be eased on borrowing. The government is going to raise the limit on loan-to-value for mortgages to 80% for first-time homebuyers. Right now, it's at 60 to 70%.
When the LTV ratio was 70%, it was still hard for first-time buyers to make a down payment of 30%. The new measure will help these people, but there are still other problems like high interest rates.
The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy will also take steps from August to protect and grow several high-tech strategic industries like semiconductors, batteries, and vaccines. These will include stabilizing supply chains for high-tech items and boosting government support for related companies. The ministry also aims to launch a task force to accelerate what it calls the industrial digital transformation. There is a new pilot project for the Ministry of Health and Welfare, too. From July, people in 6 designated cities and districts, including Jongno-gu District in Seoul, can apply for benefits when they're sick or injured and miss work. They'll get almost 44,000 won a day, or about $34 US. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, meanwhile, is going to use leftover stock to let people get the older green version of the Korean passport for a cheaper fee. And from July, national ID cards are going digital, so a smartphone version can be used with the same legal validity as a physical one. The app is called Government 24, and so far it's available for Android only, but an iOS version will be out soon. Lee Hyun, Arirang News.
In June, South Korea topped Bloomberg's monthly COVID resilience ranking and assessment of its performance in dealing with the coronavirus. Runner-up was UAE, followed by Ireland, Norway, and Saudi Arabia. The ranking is based on factors like the number of vaccine doses per 100 people as a positive indicator and the severity of restrictions. The top countries have the powerful factor of societal trust and cohesion. Bloomberg highlighted the fact that almost 90% of the South Korean population is vaccinated and strong compliance with guidelines like mask wearing. Elsewhere around the world, Russian forces continue to shell the city of Lysychansk, where reportedly around 15,000 people still remain. Wednesday saw the war's largest exchange of prisoners to date. Issue brings the updates from Ukraine.
Over in Ukraine, shelling from Russian forces continues in the eastern city of Lysychansk in the Luhansk region. Serhiy Haidai, the head of the regional military administration, on Wednesday said that the fighting is continuing on the outskirts of the city and that Russian forces are trying to storm constantly. Around 15,000 people are in the city despite recommendations for them to evacuate. Meanwhile, Ukraine on Wednesday carried out its largest exchange of prisoners of war since the beginning of the invasion, recovering 144 soldiers captured by Russia. 95 of them were stationed at the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol.
I would like to tell my loved ones that I will be back with them very soon. The emotions are overwhelming, but the journey was very difficult because it was one of many attempts to return home.
The Ukrainian government released an equal number of soldiers of the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic and Russia in exchange. Meanwhile, the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights published a report Wednesday about the situation in Ukraine. According to the report, since the beginning of the invasion on February 24th up until May 15th, there were over 8,000 civilian casualties in Ukraine. But according to an update by the UN office this week, as of Monday, the number is at 10,631. The UN said it believes that the actual number is considerably higher, as the update only includes the figures the mission was able to independently verify. Meanwhile, NATO on Wednesday formally invited the longtime neutral Finland and Sweden to join the alliance. The bloc collectively decided to approve the country's applications to join after Turkey dropped its objections Tuesday. The decision will now go to the 30 member states' parliaments and legislatures for final ratification. In response, President Putin warned that Russia would respond with threats similar in kind if NATO troops and infrastructure are deployed to Finland and Sweden. Lee Hoo, Arirang News.
Seoul was runner-up among some 1,000 cities in terms of hosting international meetings last year. The ranking by the Union of International Associations pushed up the South Korean capital one slot. The city hosted 265 meetings in 2021, both online and in person, accounting for about 4% of all meetings held worldwide. The government attribute the higher ranking to its provision of disinfection services like air shower booths and meeting venues. Brussels was number 1 and Tokyo came in third. The Seoul Museum of History, which displays the capital's artifacts from the 14th century, has fully reopened its permanent exhibition hall. All 5 zones are now open after 2 years of renovation. The upgraded hall has more than 500 new relics and features a tunnel-shaped digital exhibition area that mimics how the city was in the early 20th century. It also hosts a variety of cultural programs and events for families. Admission is free of charge from Tuesday to Sunday. An 18-year-old South Korean phenom bagged the first prize at the Van Cliburn International Piano Competition. On Thursday, Yoon had his first press conference with his mentor. Kim Bo-kyung has the full story.
Nothing's changed. I will keep practicing. 18-year-old pianist Lysychansk's firm determination to build on his success. The gold medalist of the 16th Van Cliburn competition held his very first press conference on Thursday at Korea National University of Art's Seochogu District campus. Lim performed pieces by Alexander Scriabin and then answered questions from the nation's media. Those in attendance could see that there are several factors that have led to him receiving global recognition, one of which was being completely immersed in playing the piano.
Every week as we did new pieces, I could see how he immerses himself into music, how he's always eager to try new things. I'm just surprised to see genuine freedom. The power of music can come from training by yourself in a small practice room.
Studying the music score in great detail is another. Lim talked about practicing Franz Liszt's Dante Sonata, which Liszt was inspired to write after reading Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy. Lim said he bought several versions of the book to understand the piece thoroughly, leading him to almost memorize the piece. He added he would like to have his own unique style like pianists from the past.
Pianists from the past didn't have the internet. I believe their work was more creative and unique as they found their own music by delving deep into music scores in themselves. I myself have sometimes unconsciously followed other pianist styles because I hear it on things like YouTube, but I think that's the wrong way. I think I need to do things the way pianists did in the past.
Experts also say the public education provided by the Korea National University of Arts also contributed to the recent success of South Koreans in the classical music scene. Though the future of Korean classical music is bright, the professor asked for more support for Korean classics to bloom, such as having a concert hall only for recitals or chamber music like Wigmore Hall in the UK. The very first concert that features Lim in South Korea will be on August 10th, and the most noteworthy will be the collaboration between globally renowned conductor Jung Myung-hoon and his own recital celebrating the win at the Van Cliburn competition. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
The stationary rain front with accompanying heavy rain clouds is currently situated across central regions. Tonight, heavy rain warnings are in place for the Seoul metropolitan area and advisories are issued for Gangwon-do province. Most of the rain across inland regions will taper off overnight, but showers will last a bit longer for the Seoul metropolitan area until tomorrow. For the capital region and Gyeonggi-do province, expect heavy downpours of up to 150 millimeters. For southern parts of the country, where showers will ease off overnight, sweltering conditions are expected. Maximum temperatures will surpass 30 degrees for most regions with heat wave advisories. Parts of Gyeongsangbuk-do province will be especially hot with warnings in place. Morning lows in Seoul and Busan will start off at 24 degrees Celsius. As for the daily highs, Seoul will be reaching 30 degrees, Gyeongju 36, Daejeon will reach 33 degrees. Another round of heavy monsoon showers are in the forecast early next week. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that's all from us. As always, thank you for watching.